What's up, guys? Iceman here. So, rage gaming videos. Alright? Here's a guy who makes a ton of Diablo 4 content, and he put 50 hours into the Season 5 PTR, so I didn't have to. So, let's see what this toad has to say about it thus far. Let me know in the comments, where are you guys at in terms of Season 5 and your satisfactory factor?
Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, as we continue through the week, we are slowly approaching the end of the PTR for Season 5 for Diablo 4. And as such, it seems like it's a good time to check in and talk about how the PTR has been going, what's been going on, what we know is moving forward to Season 5, and just how the community seems to feel about their experience with all the new things so far. Starting us off then, the main new mechanic to mess with in the PTR is the Infernal Horde activity. This wave-clearing game mode is actually really neat conceptually. It's a bit mind-off, but given it's just an alternate endgame activity to the other ones, there is no real problem with one of them existing that just requires a bit less brain power to enjoy, but the actual execution of this has, without a doubt, been a bit of a mess so far.
Oh, is that a storm droid?
Off, there were just rampant bugs surrounding the Abyssal Scrolls and the compasses themselves, which, you know, are the items that you use to actually interact with the Infernal Horde.
Are storm droids a thing now?
Scrolls both increase the difficulty.
I tried to make one Season 1
by giving you higher tier compasses, but unfortunately at the
got
start
the
of
shit
the
kicked
PTR,
out of
there's
me.
just the bugs going around, making the compasses have really low drop
But I
rates.
continued
and
on
the
with the
scrolls
journey
not
and
really
I beat
dropping
the game.
very often to begin with, but then when they did drop, there was just a high chance it literally disappeared from your inventory directly after teleporting out of the activity, which of course meant that you couldn't use and thus couldn't even do higher difficulty versions of the activity. This was so widespread that initially it was announced the PTR would be full on going down in order to fix the issue, but then this was changed to just be a hotfix that would done server side as a sort of band-aid to the issue, but for the most part this seems to have fixed things a fair amount for the sake of the PTR, though it is still relatively uncommon to get compasses compared to things like just running the bit on repeat. But hopefully this will just be properly taken care of before proper release of the season, as there's just a ton of time for them to actually act on this and adjust it. Past that, there's a ton of other bugs going on right now that are affecting people's experience on the PTR, even in things.
So, what do you guys think about this event where the Infernal Horde, you just have clusters and clusters of monsters just coming at you? I mean, to me, it sounds like it could be potentially a good time. Now, I haven't tried it yet because I've been holding myself away from the PTR virgin, if you will. I played it for just a hot minute. I don't think I did the Infernal Horde. I just decided, forget about it. I'm going to watch some videos. I'm going to save myself. I'm going to take it slow when it comes out. I'm not going to look at any guides. It's going to be a spiritual journey indeed when I play Season 5. But what do you guys think about that mechanic? In general, I think they've done a lot of good things. It seems like Season 5 is going to be Season 4, only with more things added to it. Almost all of which I am pleased with thus far. I don't like the designated chest that guarantees you a greater affix item. I think that's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea if they were to maintain what they had, which is the greater affix items have the same drop rate anywhere in the game, so you could just farm anywhere, basically. Maybe the chest could give you more items, but I don't like the whole greater affix guarantee thing. But that's my only real nitpick about this. I like the purple items, I like the sounds they make, I like the Infernal Horde thing, it sounds like a good idea. It's kind of ridiculous how they're going with the council from Diablo 2. I mean, this is only the council in name, alright? This isn't the real council. The real council, they had differentiation between the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. One of them would blast out charged bolts every time he'd hit it, and one of them had stone skin, one of them was immune to physical and all that crap, you know? I mean, it was pretty ridiculous, you know? There were different mechanics at work there, and they had the big castles and shit surrounding them. It wasn't just some open area, some bland-ass open area. But nonetheless, I think Season 5 is going to be a good time so far, but what do you guys think about this whole mechanic, the Infernal Horde thing? Let me know in the comments.
Things like the pit, which functions just fine on live servers, but on the PTR, it all just feels a bit off, really. The amount of mobs is different in a weird way, as is the amount of bar filled when killing enemies and such, and also bosses just across the board really are just sort of feeling like they have the wrong health numbers in the game. So take all the stuff that's going on here with a bit of a grain of salt, as this really is just a preliminary test of Season 5, not a real preview of exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Let's talk about the new activity properly, the Infernal Horde. after the fixes that happen. The activity itself then is activated with these compasses, as mentioned earlier. They awkwardly work a lot like Nightmare Dungeon sigils in the bad ways, taking up one spot in your inventory each. I really heavily hope this gets changed because inventory space has always been an issue in the game.
Oh my god, are you fucking kidding me, bro? No, it's just... What the hell? What's up with them having these materials take up space in the inventory? Didn't we solve that when they put the gems in their little thing? I mean, this whole materials in the inventory is complete bullshit. We're already having inventory problems. Is there a fundamental issue here? Is that what's going on here? I mean, it really makes me wonder, and I don't mean any offense when I say this, but who the hell is developing this game? Did they hire a couple fat bitches who were familiar with Candy Crush, and are those the ones who are playing this game? Who are making the rules, who are setting the bounds, who are determining the fundamentals that have already been determined, and that might be the problem. I heard some of you guys say in the comments of my videos how we can't have more stash space because one of the Blizzard devs mentioned this or something like that. I don't know if this is true information, but you said fundamentally it's almost impossible for them to add more because of the way your items load when you're in town and near other characters. This must have something to do with the whole trading aspect that I don't think they had to worry about in Diablo 3. But if that's the case here, that's a big problem. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a big problem. Did they really make this from the ground up without thinking about that? Because I want more stash space. That is complete bullshit if that's the case. But, yeah, I mean, let's keep going here.
Is as a permanent addition to the game. That said, these compasses use abyssal scrolls as a means of upgrading them to higher tiers, but are consumed on use, which means just as a default part of how the activity is designed, you can't really just spam these back to back, at least not the actual meaningfully challenging versions of it, which brings me to the main complaint that I and others seem to have. At least, first off, of course, it probably should be a bit more approachable to do, but repeatedly in the PTR if you want us to test it. Instead, we did have to test, regular drop rates, which just sort of feels weird if they wanted our opinions on things. But even as far as the actual game release version of this, from what we are currently seeing, the main issue that we have is just the difficulty range of the actual activity. When the activity hits right, it hits right. When you're at a difficulty level that it feels challenging for your build, but still actually completable, where you have to push yourself and really actually pay attention, but still just barely get through it in the end, when you have that, it feels really genuinely quite good. However, if you are doing a tier that is too easy for you, it just becomes completely mindless. And while I think Brain Off Farm is a good option to have, we already have things like Helltide or mid-tier pit runs for exactly that purpose. And my main issue is just how much worse this actually feels than doing tiers of the Infernal Horde that actually are a challenge. That said, this has an upper limit too, as well as it is incredibly frustrating if you actually fail at the activity because you do something that's a bit too hard. Because the entire point is it is wave after wave and then a boss at the end, and the only real failure state possible is dying. So you can build yourself for full tankiness if you need to try and get through it, which then makes the actual activity just take a ton more time, like 15 minutes or more. And if you fail after 15 minutes, yet nothing. And it feels just like a terrible use of your time, especially in an ARPG where efficient grinding is like the main thing on most players' minds.
Well, that's interesting that they have a timer, because I know a lot of guys are complaining about the timer aspect in this whole Infernal Horde thing. But the interesting thing is, that was actually a problem in Season 4. Remember that? Where they found the exploit builds, the invulnerable builds, for example, one of which was the Flame Shield Sorcerer. And the thing about the Flame Shield Sorcerer is she was really, really slow at killing with higher tiers of Rift, or Pit rather, but she was able to survive and sustain. So I think the complaint was that was ridiculous, that was boring, it was boring as hell, it took forever, but she could still do it. So this must be their way of trying to correct that, you know what I mean? Which isn't really a bad idea. That must be what's going on here. This is a way to find a balance between damage and defense, because in those examples in Season 4, the damage was just way too high. And it caused that sort of chasm, is that how you say? Where it would force people into playing super high defense builds that just kind of suck for damage. But this forces you to work around that, you know what I mean? Which isn't a bad idea, but I'm curious to see how it plays out. And I'm looking forward to Season 5. I can't wait for Season 5. All right, I really haven't played Diablo in days, and I've been getting an itch. I mean, hell, I even played Diablo 3 and I live streamed on this channel. I quickly found, after playing Diablo 3, how good Diablo 4 actually is compared to Diablo 3. Diablo 3 feels like a bland-ass game, which goes to show, it's like, wow, they actually added a lot. There's a lot to do in Diablo 4. Diablo 3, there's nothing to do. You open up the damn map, you look at the bounties, there's like nothing else to do. There's no world bosses, none of that other bullshit, there's no hell tides, none of that. All right, there's no nightmare dungeons, all they got is a damn pit and bounties. There's nothing else to do. In this, they got all sorts of things. And, yeah, I mean, maybe they're going to have more things. I don't know. But they say odd seasons are bad, right? Everybody keeps saying, I don't know. Is that true? Are the odd seasons really that bad? They say, oh, Iceman, just wait till odd seasons always suck. But here's the thing. Even if this is an odd season and if it's bad, it's the same thing as season 4, only it's a little better. All right? So it's actually a good season. I'm used to Diablo 2. I played back in the day when the new seasons, they barely added anything. There was a couple changes here and there, but they didn't add all sorts of stuff like what they're doing nowadays. So, I mean, are we missing the mark here? Maybe we're judging this too harshly. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think about that?
Minds. That said, some elites and even the bosses definitely scale really weirdly right now. As I mentioned earlier, it's just sort of a bug acknowledged by the devs that something will change here before Season 5. Just a lot of bosses just don't have the help that they should have. And the thing is, this activity definitely does have promise. It does have potential in my mind. It just needs some love and some care and some changes. The main thing that is probably negatively affecting people's view of it so far, at least as far as the PTR is going, is that it seems like the devs want it to be a limited activity. Because of the compasses and the abyssal scrolls, it feels like they want an Infernal Horde run to be something that you earn the right to do rather than just being able to boot it up whenever you want, so to say. And I don't know whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, really. I don't choose that. It's not really up to me. But I think if you are going to make it a less repeatable endgame activity, then it needs to have the level of rewards at the
just like it always does.
Match that.
People are going to complain, oh, I can't do the Infernal Horde enough, so they're just going to give you all the shit to do it. Then it's just going to become the new all you do in the game.
Especially with
and then they're going to have to balance it out. You know what I mean?
Back to back. So while some punishment definitely is fair, don't get me wrong.
That's kind of what I foresee happening here, but I mean, I don't know. With limited knowledge.
Just going up and up and up, the pain of failure becomes much more agonizing. That said, my suggestions for all this is just sort of twofold. If they do want this activity to be limited, just make the compasses stack for each tier so they don't take up as much inventory space, and make your compasses that drop always match the highest tier you have actively completed, sort of like how Nightmare Sigils work.
Stacking of those things is essential. This is complete bullshit that they don't stack. What the hell's going on here?
Lower the drop rates of compasses, but make each one more valuable when it does drop. And I
who's developing this game?
You know, now where you can salvage these compasses to get scrolls, but I just think that adds
riddle me that
step to that system. I just think it would function better the way I've said. Secondly to that, then increase the rewards of this activity massively across the board. And I think there's a way to do it that would be much more interesting than what it currently is. My suggestion is have enemies in a higher tier Infernal Horde runs drop higher amounts of Aether, then have the reward chests in these higher tiers cost more Aether each than they do in lower tiers in direct relation to the increased gain from them, but also have them give significantly more and better rewards. The reason for this scaling is because I also think that they should make it so when you fail the activity, you keep any Aether you earned while doing it. This way, if you fail a hard one, a very high tier one, after doing it for like...
If they do that, if they just simply reward you more and give you more stuff, the harder and harder it gets, it's going to turn into Diablo 3. That's why they can't really do that in games like this, where there's not much of a challenge. You got 5 buttons on cooldown, all right? So the game ultimately becomes a number crunch. So the difficult content supposedly isn't really difficult content. It's just number crunch content, all right? So what that ends up funneling into is only a few viable builds that can effectively do that content. That's why they're not doing that right now, all right? And that's a good thing. I mean, look at Diablo 2, the game that has lasted for freaking decades. People are still playing it. They knew this reality of mathematics and shit, all right? They had a cap on it because they knew it wasn't really about the challenge. It was a treasure hunting game and a number crunching game. So you have to have a sort of cap on the difficulty because that'll allow for other builds and variations to thrive. The more you funnel it up, like what this guy's saying, it seems, where it rewards you more depending on how difficult it gets, it's just going to force everybody into the same couple builds, just like what we got in Diablo 3. Ultimately, as crazy as it is, the higher and higher you go with that, the more people demand, oh, we need it to be more challenging, this and that. Challenging, right? Ultimately, it leads to one freaking build. But the closer you get to it, the more narrow it becomes. That's why they can't really do that. Path of Exile 2 is going to be interesting because there's a whole new variability in it, and that's the unlimited roll on no cooldown. So it's kind of like Dark Souls or Elden Ring in a way where it factors in other things like skill and dexterity and timing. You know what I mean? So that's going to be the challenge aspect. So in which case it is going to be capable of challenge, more than Diablo 4 anyway. But I don't know. I mean, they might have to keep it how it is. I mean, I don't want it to turn. If you want to play Diablo 3, go play Diablo 3, you know? If you want to just have those like couple builds up at the top who thrive in the rifts and that's it, then you should play that. This is supposed to be a different game. That's why it's the 4th entry now, you know? It's supposed to be a different game. So I don't really want it to turn into that. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below.
Like 15 or 20 minutes, it's not a complete waste. You still have at least the currency. Maybe they make you only get half of it, but still you keep some of it, right? But because of these scaling costs in higher tiers, that means that you can't just go and like spend all the Aether that you kept in like a low tier version of it you can complete brainlessly afterwards, because it would just be more Aether than you would ever need at that tier, more than would ever actually get you anything of value. Instead, it lets you build up a bank for when you do complete the harder tiers instead of failing. And it lets you get more rewards when you do succeed, which I think is a good idea. I mean, at least those are my 2 cents on the whole thing. As for things outside of the Infernal Horde itself, then, main changes include the fact that the summonable ladder bosses no longer require dungeon resetting in between, which is just honestly a massively good quality of life change, not to mention that legendary items now have bonus temper rerolls for each greater affix on the item to lower the chances of bricking a more powerful and exciting drop. And you could always make the classic argument that we shouldn't be happy about these changes because it always should have been this way, but it's the way it is now, and I'm happy that it is. There's also a ton of UI changes to the way that items look, the way affixes are displayed. Legendary powers in the Codex of Power now just have their own individual icons for each one. Just a lot of nice little visual upgrades across the board that are generally just sort of appreciated, honestly. Past that, there are a ton
Season 4 only better, you know, and I like Season 4.
Of new both legendaries and uniques for each class, for all classes. Just a lot of new powers available, including a ton that weren't even revealed to us in the initial discussions about Season 5 or the PTR. And they just have a massive change to not only the potential new builds, but also to pre-existing ones too. Some of the most exciting ones in my personal opinion and experience are things like the Crown of Lucian, which gives you significantly reduced base resource costs, but then also it gives you a stacking damage and actually resource cost increase every time that you spend resource as a stacking buff. This scales to really powerful damage boosts at higher stacks that more than make up for the extra resource costs, especially with how many avenues there are for resource generation in the way that the game
I just wish they were a bit more creative with
this even has a bunch of synergy potential
instead of just having the more numbers,
like
less numbers thing.
Varathiel sword that makes basic skills do just a ton of bonus
Here's
damage,
another just
but
more
also
numbers
cost
thing.
resource to use. But if you can power yourself while using both of these together,
I like the things that have like a 25% chance you blast freaking lasers out of your
non-class
eyeballs or something,
techniques,
you know?
which is
Things like
really
that.
cool, honestly. Or if you're a sorcerer with a new axial
Or have
conduit,
Thunderstorm
you can charge
equipped
up your
while
chain
this
lightning in incredible
item
ways.
is in
Then you
hand,
can
you know,
combine
things
that
like
with the other
that.
two
I
just
like
sort of create some
those
sort
sort
of
of
new
effects.
bug that
Not just your numbers are a little
everything on
bigger
your
when you
screen
do
in
this.
insane amounts. And honestly,
Those
I
things
do
have
hope
their
that
place,
bug does
but
get fixed, but not in a way that ruins the combo and how these things interact completely, as it's a really
they
fun
need to find
conceptual
a good
mingling of
balance of
mechanics
that.
that just is obviously creating some weird things behind the scenes number-wise. That said, even without axial conduit, the other two on sorcerer is actually still doing a lot of good things that are much less bugged. Overall, it's essentially one new properly performing build.
I gotta
for
try
sorcerer
that lightning
isn't
sorcerer. I'm
bug-based,
gonna try
and
that.
an unfortunate
Season
amount
5.
of nerfs outside of that to other parts of the class. The devs definitely seem like they are consistently at least a step behind on sorcerer, if not two, as this just feels like they are still trying to punish the class for being bugged all the way back in like Season 2. That said, Druid has gotten seemingly a lot of love in this PTR, with new legendary aspects like the Moonrage aspect that spawns in extra wolves to be a part of your pack, or things like the new Spirit Bond aspect.
Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me.
Unkillable and makes up to 17.5% of the damage that you take
Oh my
instead
god.
be applied to them. So it may
That's
as well
exactly what they
agree that
needed.
it
The wolves need to do more
damage
damage.
by that amount, and
they need to hit more than just one
downside
target
of
at a
wolf
time.
companions and endgame content,
They need to like
which is
swipe, you know, when they
honestly
swipe, they
really
should be able to hit a
solid
couple
as
targets at a
combination.
time, and this is
The
complete
other three
bullshit.
classes then seem to be
We also
having
need to
much
Grizzly
more
Summon.
discernible
Where the hell's the
playing
Grizzly
experience,
Summon?
by which I mean some things are better, some things are worse, but on the whole, overall, I just
let's get that in the expansion. I'll buy the damn expansion. I'm going to buy it anyway, but I mean, I'm just saying. I'll build it today if you add the damn Grizzly summon. And you make the summons actually do decent damage.
And there has been a lot
I want to summon Droid, who's like a hybrid with Cataclysm and Tornadoes and shit. That's what I want.
PTR is just off. Don't take any actual numbers as final.
That's it for now. I'm going to stop the video. If you guys want to watch the whole thing, it'll be linked in the description. Let me know what your thoughts are on this in the comments below. Where are you at with Season 5? Are you excited to play it? I'll see you guys in the next video. Like this video if you will. Subscribe to the page. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace be with you.